Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another book reading with me, Richard Vobes. It's very nice to see you. Sorry about the slight delay there getting to you. I suddenly had to go and get myself a glass of water for the reading. And also, of course, it's a new book. So I very hastily set up the front page, as it were, for this. I think I've got it spelt correctly. I think I've got all that right. So hello and welcome. It's Wednesday. We are starting a new book. If you've joined us thinking that we're still on Lift Luck on English Roads, then whatever it was called now, I've lost it. What's it called? On Southern Roads. This is very similar. It's on Southern English Roads. And who knows if there's any Lift Luck going on in it. But this is a different author, James John Hissey, written in 1896 this was, and it's quite a big volume, sent in by Justine Jones, who happens to be in Goring by Sea at the moment. So there we are. So I'm just trying to find the first page. There are numerous illustrations in this from time to time, and I will endeavour to share those with you with the illustration cam, a cam of many names. And on the frontispiece is we showed this last time, I think, Burpham Ferry. Just getting myself organised here a bit better. Burpham Ferry, which is here. If I can get that to focus or anything. It doesn't seem to want to. I don't know what's the matter with the little camera. It is a rubbish. Why won't you focus? God damn it. Anyway, there you are. You can see it. I'm gonna muck about with that. And we're going to start on chapter 1. Before we do that, let's say a quick few hellos to everybody who is joining us. To Justine Jones, to Turbo Stream, and to the lovely Julia. Audrey Forbes Hamilton, hello. John F. and Lee Lawson. The Green Man and Dave of Yore, Philip Hammond and Mary. Billabong O'Neill, Andrew Norris, What Ho, Ed Loud, Linda Kane, James Poulton, Peter Coombs, Sherry Allen, hello from Massachusetts, and Carol Glue, is that how it's pronounced, Glue? And Steve G, good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us. And if this is the first time here, you're very, very welcome. There are others, of course, who are not in the chat room, but fair enough. True Tales from the Tombstone is also here as well. So, marvellous. We've got a new book. It's quite exciting on a new book. I've only read about a page and a bit of this, so that's all I know. I don't know where it goes. I don't know. It's always slightly worrying as well, because you never quite know if it's going to be suitable. We've only had one book, which we got about 2/3 in, and then we just had to ditch. Going to be strained not reading along with you this time, Linda Kane says. No, going to be much better. It's far better for me if I know other people aren't reading along, because Linda Kane will know occasionally I miss a word out and I paraphrase the sentence to make it complete without having to stop too many times. It is bad enough that I struggle with the reading, but I do my best. I do my best. So, there is no introduction in this. There is a little preference. Shall I read the preference? It's always good, isn't it? Because mostly when people pick up books, I never think that they always read these little preferences, introductions, or is it preference or preface? How do you pronounce it? We can always ditch it if it's crap, says Justine. I tell you what, if it's crap, it will make some nice lighter paper for my essay. No, it's a first edition. It's a good book. So this is the preference or preface, or however you pronounce it. In the present age, now bear in mind this is 1896, in the present age of rushing to and fro at steam haste, not the slow post-haste of old, when globe-trotting has become quite commonplace, this simple chronicle of a leisurely driving tour of only a few hundred miles on southern English roads may seem almost an anomaly. On behalf, however, of quiet, loving tourists like myself, who do not measure beauty by the mile, and who from pure pleasure choose to travel by road and behind horses, just as our pre-railway forefathers did, I may quote a dictum of Ruskin's. A fool wants to shorten time and space, a wise man wants to lengthen both. How many of those who rush over different lands and seas as fast as railway train or steamboat will convey them really know anything of the countries they hasten through, or are cognizant of the charm of deliberate and desultory travel, wherein one has full command over one's time, conveyance, route and luggage, and can stop at any point on the way as wished. This is true travelling. The railway takes you from place to place. By it you merely depart and then arrive. The distance traversed in a given time never appeals to me. One man may actually see more in a quiet walk around his garden than another who has done his thousands of miles. The traveller who goes the farthest and journeys the fastest does not therefore see the most. So even in these days of rapid transit and magnificent distances, I trust that this unvarnished record of a restful, health-giving holiday spent in driving about the peace-bestowing English country may help to show how much of beauty and interest lies at our own doors, and prove the needlessness of going abroad to discover the picturesque. And there's another bit to come, but I just wanted to stop there because that's very much the essence of the bald explorer, travelling very often short distances and looking about and exploring what you see in that short distance instead of, especially when I'm going for a walk, instead of going for a walk of 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 miles, 20 miles, some people sort of laud it out. The distance is everything. I do disagree. I mean, the exercise is important, of course, but it's what you get from it. For many summers now past, have we taken driving exhibitions through some portion of Old England, our aim being, as much as possible, to keep away from the crowded and well-beaten tourist track. And this volume contains a simple account of the last of these most enjoyable outings in search of fresh roads and taverns new. To Mr. Pearson, thanks are due to the pains taken in doing the drawings. It seems to me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so John James Hissey, or James John Hissey, whichever way it is, George John Haig. Oh, no, that was the acid bath murderer. 1896. So this is what he says, one of the last ones. I know you can buy a set of them. I looked at a set for £550, and there was about 8 or 6 to 8 volumes like this, all probably first editions. I have a second one, which is probably earlier, no doubt. I don't know. But we're not doing that one. We're doing this one because Justine sent it in. Julia says, old book, Vobe Studio, Vobe One-Eyed Kenobi, dulcet tones, cup of tea, are perfect. She ticking off thing. What's that? Dulcet tones. Oh, dear. Aaron Bacarius, Mark Twain, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, up and coming, January 2021. Nice to see you. And Thomas Michael, did you get into the factory on Water Lane? No, I haven't been to Water Lane since, to be honest with you. And Audrey Forbes, nice to see you. Are you sitting comfortably? Right, so there we go. Well, let's get on to chapter 1. Let's get this thing going. I'm going to hold it in my hand. Sometimes it's more comfortable. Let's get rid of the mouse. Make ourselves... Are you comfortable? Sorry, I've been faffing and stuff for the first few minutes of this. Chapter 1. Says William Hazlitt in his delightful essay, Ongoing a Journey, anent. Now, I've seen this word a couple of times, anent, A-N-E-N-T. Somebody tell me what that means, because I've never heard of it. We may come across some archaic language in this, because this is quite old. So if I stop and sound a bit, it may be that it's a word that I just can't read. You know what I'm like. Or it isn't a genuinely old-fashioned word that who knows what it means. Anent. Anyway, says William Hazlitt on his delightful essay, Ongoing a Journey, anent the charm of freedom in travel, the soul of a journey is liberty, perfect liberty to think, feel, and do just as one pleases, to be free from all impediments and of all inconveniences. He was discoursing about a walking tour, which has its special delights counterbalanced, however, it seems to me, by certain decided drawbacks. For on a pedestrian expedition you can take but very few things with you, otherwise tramping all day long with a heavily laden knapsack strapped to your back is apt to turn what should be a pure pleasure outing into one of positive toil. The more especially should be the day hot and the way hilly. Besides, it requires a certain amount of training to set forth on a lengthened walking tour so as to be refreshed and not fatigued by the unaccustomed exertion. There is, of course, cycling to be considered, but with all its charms as a pleasant exercise, cycling is also open to the foregoing objections as regards the limited amount of luggage available on tour and the training needed. Besides, it entails the additional disadvantage of your having to look after and clean a possibly muddy machine at night, when perhaps sufficiently tired with a long day's work. For, as I have found from bitter experience, the task of tending to the steel seed is one not likely to be entrusted to the average and probably unsympathetic ostler. Moreover, your companion, unless you go alone, must necessarily be a cyclist too. And then there are the considerations of pace and distance to be done each day, to be carefully taken into account beforehand, otherwise disagreements may arise on the way, and what should be a health and pleasure-giving outing might easily prove, by over-exertion, a hurtful experience. Days of yore, anent equals about, or concerning. Thank you for that, anent. Oh, that's interesting. Let me just see where he says on the about the charm of freedom travel. Oh, right. Did anyone know that before Days of yours looked that up? I bet not. None of the essence of a true holiday, especially those who are not overstrong, is to the essence of a true holiday, especially those not overstrong, is to enjoy a change of scene and air with as little fatigue or worry as possible. And so far as I've been able to discover, the best way of securing these supreme advantages is to take a driving tour. For travelling thus, you are enabled to have with you a reasonable amount of baggage, including all the things needful for health or comfort, besides sundry luxuries, such as a few books by favourite authors to beguile a wet evening at a lonely country inn, an ample supply of sketching materials, as well as, perchance, a photographic outfit, to say nothing of wraps, overcoats, or waterproofs in case of bad weather. For the English summer, delightful though it be, is like a fickle maiden, uncertain and tearful at times. And who would wish it otherwise? Not I, in truth. Variety is the salt that lends zest to the pleasures of life, and shower, aye, and even storm as well as sunshine, are needed to bring out the full picturesque qualities of the landscape. Where would be the popular charm and poetry of the majority of Turner's pictures without the changeful sky scenery he introduced? A glance through his illustrations to England and Wales will show you what I mean. Sometimes, indeed, during our wanderings, the skyscape has even been more interesting and noteworthy than the landscape. A driving tour is the very luxury of travelling. Whether you be the fortunate possessor of a carriage and horses, or have to hire them for the occasion, it matters not, nor in the face of the fact that no further expenses are entailed for railway fares, cabs, etc., and that the charges at the rural inns are the reverse of extortionate. Can it be deemed a costly form of spending a summer holiday, especially taking into consideration the constant change of scenery and air, the varying incidences and feast of loveliness such an expedition provides? And when he says a driving tour, he means in a horse and cart. He's not talking about cars, just to clear that up. The driving tourist, too, is in an enviable position of delightful independence. Timetables trouble him not, and having no one's convenience to consult but his own, he need never be in a hurry. He is happily free from the worry of looking over after his luggage or the risk of losing it, for his belongings go with him and are ever at his command, even on the way if required. He can breakfast at his leisure without the fear of missing a train, can start his day's stage when he will, can loiter on the road or speed along just as the mood dictates. He can pull up for a rest and refreshment at any wayside hostelry that may take his fancy, or, should he so prefer, may picnic in a shady nook or grassy field, for he can carry his lunch in his convenience or in his conveyance and a bait for his horse besides, all that is really needed for him being to reach an inn at the end of each day's pleasant pilgrimage. For a happy combination of comfort with independence, what form of travelling can compare with a driving tour? And who would not be light-hearted having such an expedition in immediate prospect, full of untasted pleasure, with all fair England before him to explore? The only added thing you need is the Black Maria, a splendid van from which the bold explorer can... Oh, sorry, made that up. So I guess, got to bear in mind, this is sort of a bit bloody obvious, but this is at the turn of the century. Not this century, the last century, where I guess, people only ever went travelling when they needed to, or to market and things like that. And if they were, I guess, were going on the trains and things, as he said. So it's quite an interesting social point that he makes. Having thus sung the praises of our special mode of travel, though not, I trust, having sounded the horn too loudly, let me bid you, kind reader, should I say listener, in imagination to mount the box seat of our roomy and comfortable four-wheeled dog-cart as we roll pleasantly and peacefully along the quiet country roads in spirit together. Allow me to note to you the varied beauties and characteristics of the mellow, home-like scenery we pass through, to point out from time to time the interesting architectural features of the ancient churches, stately halls, or moated granges, haunted or otherwise, that we may come upon, and to talk over the traditions which that rare old romancer Father Time has gathered around about the latter, to show you the quiet charms of sleepy medieval market towns. Yeah, find me a nice sleepy quiet market town. And remote old world villages that have never known the hand of the modern builder. Yeah, show me a nice little village that's never seen the hand of the remote modern builder. That would be useful. Nor heard the sound of the rushing railway train, to call your attention to to call your attention to the simple poetry that exists in many a peaceful farmstead and rural cottage home. We really are going back in time. Now and then, too, Our eyes will be charmed by the vision of a genuine old coaching inn, standing in dignified solitude by the side of the erst turnpike road, with its weather-stained front and storm-beaten sign, swinging, as in times long past, at the top of a post, so that all who passes cannot fail to notice it. Such ancient hostelries appeal strongly to one's sympathies by the associations they rouse of departed days, too often, alas, also of a departed prosperity, and the pictures they inevitably bring to the mind's eye of jovial hosts, jolly Jehus, rollicking postboys, and, by no means least, of our hail fellow well-met, port wine-loving ancestors, peace to their ashes, who, beheld through the mellowing influences of the glass of time, appear much more interesting and desirable company than their unpicturesque descendants who travel by railway in the same carriage with you for hours at a stretch and say not a word. Why the railway should be so conducive to unmannerly and chilly reserve, I cannot comprehend. However, it may not be wholly to blame, for in America sociability reigns in the cars, and if you be so minded, you may chat with your fellow travellers all the while you journey on, with merely rests at meal times. But after this digression, to return to my subject of Old England, permit me furthermore to discourse from time to time, during our pleasant progress of quaint rural customs, curious folklore, local legends and wise sayings that still linger in the land, and to crave you not to fail to observe the sundry odd characters that, even in these conventional days, may yet be encountered when travelling out of the beaten track, and generally permit me to do the honours of the charmingly beautiful, interesting line of country that we shall traverse during our tour. They certainly knew how to drag out a sentence back in the old Victorian days, didn't they? Oh dear. So there's a lot of it's obviously a very chatty book, this one, very chatty, which is explains why it's so big. Unlike Tickner, where he could, lots of beautifully well constructed sentences. This is a bit more chatty. That's okay. I don't mind. I like it. On previous journeys we'd made to London. We haven't done those yet. We had made London our starting point. This, however, involved both on the first day's outward stage and the last stage homeward, a tedious, intensely uninteresting and unprofitable drive through the mean and long-drawn-out suburbs of that mighty province, or county, is it, of smoke-begrimed bricks and mortar. This time, by way of change, we planned to start from Eastbourne, so that practically we could at once commence our drive in the real country. We had agreed that we would spend our holiday of 3 or 4 weeks exploring some portion of southern England. As to our route, we had formed no precise plans. We merely had a sort of hazy notion that we would drive first northward to East Grinstead, and then on through Sussex, Hampshire and Dorsetshire, find our way possibly into Somerset, and so home through Wiltshire, travelling by a different line of country to be arranged when the time came. How we carried out our plans the following pages will show. We were purely on pleasure bent, and declined to be bound by any precise itinerary. Judging merely from the map, our course may probably appear without much plan or purpose. I will not here anticipate our exact route. The day we set forth upon our expedition happily proved to be all that we could desire. The fates smiled on us, and we felt duly grateful. Following the excellent example of that famous pre-railway traveller, the worthy Samuel Pepys of diary renown, we awoke betimes, to find, however, the sun already up before us, shining cheerfully down from a fine summer cloud-dappled sky. Moreover, a raising barometer promised a continuance of such satisfactory conditions. Had we the ordering of the weather, it could not have been more to our liking. Early in the morning, the dog-cart was at our door in full travelling order. We had packed it overnight. A list of everything that could possibly be required for use or comfort on the journey having been carefully thought over some time before, so that nothing was forgotten in the hurry of departure. Our farewells said, there was no further cause for delay. We were quickly in our places, the word was given, the traces tightened, and we found ourselves without any loss of time traversing at a brisk trot the tree-lined streets of Eastbourne. We got away, to use an expression in vogue in the good old coaching and posting days, by the Lewis Road. A rather hilly one at first, it proved to be, and in a short time the prosperous-looking, yet withal unpicturesque domain of modern villadom was, with small regret, left behind, and we reached the fresh and free open country. I think it's quite interesting, is it not, that, this sort of, at this turn of the century time, I suppose, these clearly sort of towny type people are going, in many of the books that we've read, are desperate to get out into the country. And one wonders if it is down to the Industrial Revolution era where, the country has been depopulated, people are in the towns and the cities, and also you've got coal as the main fuel, belching out smoke and smog and people crowding into houses, and so there's less and less space. And so that sense of getting away probably is greater than it is than we do, because people didn't travel as much, and the countryside was a little bit of for that generation, I imagine, a bit of for townies probably a bit of an unknown thing. So I'm making a random statement at it, but it seems to be what's coming across. Anyway, our road led us at a considerable elevation alongside of a smoothing sloping downs. These flanked away to the left in stately rounded masses, and to our right a great expanse of level land was spread out map-like beneath us, dotted here and there with sleepy hamlets and lonely farmsteads, the silvery sparkle of still water in sluggish dykes, and a long white tail of evanishing steam from a passing train, speeding along in a feverish 19th century haste. Sorry, I was lost myself in that, because I was thinking, I wonder if we should have a look at a map, because we know they're heading towards East Grinstead, and now that he's saying they're going next to a train line, we ought to be able to look that up quite easily in a book, where we might have a diversion in a second and do that. So let me just go back, because I sort of was just reading but not actually taking in what he was saying. So he saw the sleepy hamlets and lonely farmsteads, a silvery sparkle of still water in sluggish dykes, and a long white trail of the evanishing steam from a passing train, speeding along in the feverish 19th century haste, enlivened the restful monotony of green and grey, which was bounded in the far distance by a low, uneven line of faint blue hills, which presumably are the North Downs. Glancing southwards and seawards, the fine rounded sweep of Pevensey Bay, where the warlike Normans landed of old, came into view. So they must be going up the A22, pretty much, I'm thinking, with the many Martillo towers marshalled in orderly array along its shore, the white foam of the breaking waves being traceable far, far away in curving parallels with the pebbly beach, and beyond the bay, hazily indistinct, could just be discerned the bold cliffs above Hastings, the town itself being half hidden by a blue veil of its own smoke. We call a short halt to enjoy the wide panorama of the land and sea. That's interesting. So they're not actually, it sounds like that he's not actually driving the dog cart. He's got a driver. Halt, I say, driver. Do you mind halting for a second? We want to absorb.
Yeah, right, no problem. Whatever you say, you're paying for it, my lord.
However they go. Through our field glasses we could make out Pevense's ruined castle, a dark spot in the sun-steeped landscape, and the uplands of battle where the Normans won them a kingdom. We looked upon historic ground. It is refreshing to the eye of the town dweller, after his usual limited unlovely vision of house-lined streets, to be enabled thus to range unrestrained over vast spaces of open and beautiful country like this. The man whose vision is forever cramped is but too apt to have his mind cramped also. To see broadly is a great help to thinking broadly. It expands one's ideas. Looking down from some commanding height upon a far-reaching expanse of country, over hill and dale and rock and wool and river, how poor and trivial seem the greatest affairs of man, how paltry his ambitions, his ambitious aims, his strivings and struggles for more or less transient fame. But I am moralising, and that is a task best left for the priest in the pulpit. Here and there in the landscape we noticed with delight several windmills plainly showing in the bright sunshine, their sails busily revolving round and round in the freshening breeze, now white in the light, now grey in the shade. It is curious how small a thing in the distant prospect will at once arrest one's attention if it only moves. That it were merely motionless would in all probability escape our notice altogether. Windmills at work always give a cheerful feeling of life and movement to a landscape, and one can only regret that they are not more general features of the countryside. But nowadays, what with steam, which is so much more dependable than wind power, and farmers finding that cattle raising is more profitable, or should I say less unprofitable, than corn growing, I am sadly afraid that the picturesque and the artist-loved windmill is doomed to gradual extinction. Certainly during our road travels for years past in various parts of England, covering altogether some 1,000 miles of ground, we have come upon such many mills deserted and going the way of all uncared-for things, whilst during all the time and in all those many miles we have seen only one windmill in the course of erection, and this exception to the rule was impressed upon our memory by the rarity of the proceedings. As we drove on, we had a fine panoramic prospect of the long lines of the downs rising and falling in apparent endless succession. This famous range of chalk hills has a subtle charm of curve, a dignity of modelled mass, and a grandeur yet grace of form all of its own. The South Downs are majestic, as Gilbert White has truly remarked. Gilbert White we mentioned yesterday. His name still crops up. Though some people who fail to realise that grandeur belongs to form as well as to size let me just do that again. Though some people who fail to realise that grandeur belongs to form as well as to size have sneered at the term as applied to their modest elevation. The Downs possess the majesty of mighty masses and of grand sweeping unbroken outlines. They impress the artistic beholder by the expression of spaciousness and the idea of vast distances which they convey. The prospect of looking along their level summit seems infinite. Ridge succeeds ridge endlessly, fading away in colour from green through grey to tenderest blue, till in the far horizon their outlines become dim and dreamy, and it is hard to distinguish between land and sky. Surely there is a majesty in such vast, far-reaching visions of earth and air and sky, quite as much as in mere height. There is a poetic glamour in the mystery of the far away, where all things seem possible, that appeals to me even more than the uprising snow-clad peak, and that makes the guidebook statement of so many thousand feet above sea level seem vulgar, boastful and absurd. You cannot measure grandeur by feet any more than you can purchase true artwork by the square yard. Are you all doing okay, and are you enjoying it? That's a quick question at past or just gone. There is a breadth in the bold gold-green slopes of the downs, viewed in unshadowed sunshine, that contrasts most effectively with the soft purple-grey shadows of their vast hollows, and the shadows themselves possess a peculiar quality that I can only liken to a deep bloom, a something that cannot be defined in words and can hardly be given in paint, and that is quite different and quite apart from the broken shadow of a steep mountain or fellside. The downs possess a gentle grandeur. They are impressive, but never gloomy or forbidding, and owing to their gradual curves of their hollows, there is no abrupt transition on them from light to shade, such as there is caused by rugged rock or crag or cliff on the hills of the sterner North Country. The light upon the downs softly merges into shade, and shade again imperceptibly merges into light, without the beholder being able to point to any deciding boundary line. But though it has the happy and rare combination of grandeur with greatness, and is so delightful to look upon, this wild, yet not barren downland is a difficult country for the artist to deal with successfully, because of the want of good and varied foregrounds, so abounding in Wales and most other favourite let me just do that again. These sentences are so long. But though it has the happy and rare combination of grandeur with greatness, and is so delightful to look upon, this wild yet not barren downland is difficult country for the artist to deal with successfully, because of want of good and varied foregrounds, so abounding in Wales and most other favourite sketching grounds. The rutty chalk road, some rugged gorse bushes, and rarely here and there a few ragged, twisted, wind-blown thorns are available, with perhaps a sunburnt, grey-cloaked shepherd, crook in hand, and straggling sheep for life. But such foregrounds become monotonous by constant repetitions. Yet the artist, if he paints the truth and what he sees, is sadly limited to these. Up and down hill, with gradual rises and falls, our road now took us through the somnolent village of Willingdon, and past one or two windmills close at hand or in the near distance, till it brought us to the intensely uninteresting collection of mean modern-built cottages at Polegate, an unhappy 19th century product, apparently begotten of the railway junction there of that name. All these travellers, it's interesting how, these writers of travellers and all the books that we've read just hate what was modern then, architecturally. It's fascinating. And I approve. I think because it must have just the local stuff must have been so charming and so beautiful and so delightful, and yet built You know, you think these timber framed, these flint built, these stone built, the red tile clad houses of tradition that were built individually, one at a time, as and when needed by local materials, popped up as and when. And then at this time in the Victorian period, there they were with an industrial way of producing bricks, an industrial way of moving that material from different parts of the country on the trains. And suddenly it was happening. From about 1845, the industrial world and houses like my little brick 2 up, 2 down Victorian house that was suddenly springing up on what had been open country. Even my house was built 1885. It must have been similar to how we feel when we see the modern new builds going up. There's that sort of ghastly thing, except that the difference there is that at least with the Victorian buildings, they're still standing 130, 150 years later, whereas you wonder if the new builds of today are going to be still standing with little or no maintenance. How are we doing, by the way, out there in the land of? Lots sound like he's near Polegate. Yes, I got that. Our blunt bow-headed whale backbound downs, says Kipling. Linda Kane. I'm being censored again, says Michael White. Are you? And Josh says there's always a sense of freedom being on or just under the downs when you see close up how wild parts of them are. That's right. You must have used a naughty word, Michael. Yeah, unfortunately, there is a huge long list of words that, and some of them are not naughty, and I do apologise for that. We need to weed those words out. Nigel says, in what way? Oh, yes. I only said people buy art to match their curtains. I said most people taste is in their mouth. Anyway, I don't know whether you're enjoying it or not. I guess you're still there, so maybe that's a yes. Where did we get to? Willingdon. Where is Willingdon? Anybody know where Willingdon is? I can't think where Willingdon is. So anyway, so there we are. He's looking at these modern buildings. It's sad to think how man can spoil. Here we go. It is sad to think how man can spoil such fair spots by his purely commercial needs without a thought or consideration of mere beauty. The green fields around the fair downs beyond are a setting surely worthy of something better, but the needful railway is the sworn enemy of the picturesque. It seems inevitable that we should pay the price of ugliness for the undoubted blessings of speedy and cheap communication, though why it should be so of necessity I cannot comprehend. But facts are unanswerable arguments. We have simply to accept them with as much grace as may be. Had the locomotive been invented in the picturesque medieval times, I wonder whether the railway would have been so aggressively a scenic spoiler. Fancy a medieval railway. Well, perhaps it would be as easy to imagine a medieval cathedral built not of ad margerem Dei gloriam, which must be Latin for something like magnificent glory, but cheaply by contract at the lowest tender artwork and stone carving, included with stained glass windows as an extra separate estimate. Yes, in other words, Barratt Homes or Wimpey Homes imagine them building the churches and cathedrals. Doesn't bear thinking about. Apropos of my remarks, I may here relate a little history which, though it sounds somewhat like a fable, is, I believe, strictly vicarious. When the building of the Roman Catholic Cathedral of Southwark was first mooted, the elder Pugin was commissioned to prepare plans of an edifice that should rival those poems in stones of the ancient days. Pugin was, I don't know if that's how his name is, Pugin was in his glory. The work was a labour of love to him, and after some considerable time he completed his plans and elevations and duly submitted them to the council for their approval. As shown on paper, and how delightful a thing it is to idealise on paper, the designs were worthy of any century. Pugin had produced a masterpiece. Greatly was it admired. The council were enthusiastic over it to a man. The architect was delighted, and everything promised to flow on as smoothly and as certainly as the river to the sea. Then the council asked Pugin how much he estimated his scheme would cost to build, and how long would it probably be before completed. These were purely commercial questions, needful without doubt, but they elicit from Pugin a crushing rejoinder. "How can I rival medieval work," exclaimed he, "if I have to consider time and cost? How can I tell how long it will take to build? No one has or ever could build nobly like this. If you merely want an ordinary big church, a building roofed incapable of holding so many people comfortably or more uncomfortably, with an altar, tiled floor, a series of windows, why didn't you say so?" Whereupon the dream in architecture remained a dream, like so many others have done. And a simpler edifice that this century can produce took order and took its place. Our thoughts wandered thus whilst we were kept waiting at the level crossing at Polegate during the progress of some shunting operations, the only thing a railway appears to do slowly. However, at last the gates were opened, and, our unacceptable lesson in patience over, we proceeded onwards, the greenful country before us appearing doubly beautiful after our unwelcome detention amongst such ugly surroundings. There is one thing to be noted about the railway that is a negative virtue. It does manage to attract and keep to itself much of the unsightliness there is in the land. The cheap tripper, one of its peculiar offsprings, never ventures very far therefrom, the speculatively built desirable villa, which makes a virtue of being within easy distance of the station, the hideous manufactory, and the kindred eyesores all cling as close as possible they can to it. He's a bit of a snob, isn't he? Old England beyond the modern iron road is, however, old England still fresh and green and mellow, with the bloom of ages upon it, restful to the eye, and peace bestowing to the jaded mind weary of the stress and strife of modern city life, whether that stress be society's monotonous mill, professional cares, or business worries. A short distance beyond Polegate, we pulled up for a time and wandered across some fields in search of a spot marked as Otham on our map. Here, adjoining an old farmhouse, is the desecrated chapel of St. Lawrence, all that now remains of a former abbey. An artist friend of us told us of the existence of this ruin. He had accidentally come upon it whilst tramping and trespassing about the locality in quest for subjects for fresh pictures. The red-tiled roof and chimneys of the house peeping above surrounding woods showed us our destination, which we reached without more difficulty than climbing over 2 5-barred gates. Here we found before us a picturesque old farmstead of the home-like Sussex type, with a tranquil pond in front. The building was long and low. One portion of it, we discovered, was supported by strong buttresses that gave the dwelling a quaint appearance, and conveyed the pleasing impression that the old home was considered one worthy of being preserved and cared for, rather than one to be ruthlessly pulled down in parts when these showed signs of weakness. Even the humblest home that had ever existed long enough possesses its own little unwritten history, perchance also its lowly... Let me read that again. Even the humblest home that has ever existed long enough... Even the humblest home that has ever existed long enough possesses its own little unwritten history, perchance also its lowly romance, and mutely appears to be allowed to exist, if possible. I want to just pause. Oh no, we're coming to the end of the chapter. Let's do that first. We found the farmer himself leaning over his wicket gate, apparently studying the weather. We apologised for our intrusion and asked if we might be allowed to inspect the ruined chapel that we understood was somewhere close at hand. His reply, smiling given, was, however, somewhat enigmatical. "What, 2 in 1 day?" he said, with a Somerset accent all of a sudden. We couldn't fathom his meaning, so we merely expressed our regret at disturbing him. "Well," he examined, "there is surely room enough for both. You're very welcome to wander about where you like." The mystery of his original remark was soon solved. It turned out that an artist had already arrived there that morning before us and had set up his easel and was busily at work. The artist proved to be our friend, as happy chance had it, and the farmer, seeing us come also armed with sketching materials, thus jokingly expressed his astonishment at the unwonted appearance of 2 artists coming on the very same day to paint his old place, the tranquillity of which was seldom disturbed by the presence of a stranger the whole year long. So near to, yet so remote from the outer world lived our Otham farmer, or Otham. We soon made excellent friends with him, by dint of taking an interest in his interests and gaining ourselves some insight into the life of a small tenant farmer in these parts. He courteously invited us into his house for a rest, an invitation we accepted in order to obtain a glance at the interior. But there was nothing within that arrested our attention or called for comment. The chapel, of which we had come in special search, we found doing duty as a stable. There is an early English window in it, the stonework crumbling fast away, and the remains of some buttresses externally, and that is all that is now left of the ancient Abbey of Otham, founded by Ralph de Dean and Sibylla, his wife, in the middle of the 12th century, who, though it would have canopied their bones till doomsday, but all things have their end. Though it would have canopied their bones till doomsday, but all things have their end. Obviously, that is like a little quote from something. Anyway, that's the end of the first chapter. But I'm interested where this is. This, what is it? Otterham, Abbey of Otterham. Is that a place? Is that real? Wonder if the barn is still there. Grade 2 listed, says Linda Kane. The chapel is situated on flat ground south of Otham Court Lane, near Polegate. Now Otham Court on modern maps, says Nigel Sadler. And is it private? I bet it's private and you can't go to it. Let me just have a quick look. It appears to have been re-roofed and sound now. Oh, what a shame. Well, I suppose that's good. What is it? What do we call it? Otham. Otham Abbey, Wikipedia. Okay, Otham Court is the remains of the chapel. Hang on, let's open a few of these and see what we get. No pictures there. No pictures there. That's the same bloody thing. Bear with me, caller. Images. Has anyone got a picture? Let me just copy that. Otham Abbey, copy. Let's paste. Images. Bayham Old Abbey. Has anybody got... Yes, it's private. Oh, right, it's private. It appears to have been roofed. Thankfully, there are people with money who can afford to carry out such restoration work. Well, that's true. I'm just trying to... Oh, here we go. Let's come over here and see if we can see... This is it. Is that it there? Oh, yeah, there's a window he talks about. It's got a roof on it. Polegate. A venue for weddings. Is that what it is? A venue for hire, it says there. For weddings. So here's a wedding outside the very place. So it's not terribly huge. There's inside. Coming in the door. You can see lots of different additions and things that have been done to it over the years. One window. So many things on private land we will never see. Yeah. It's now a wedding venue. I found the brochure, says Nigel Sadler. Oh, it's all good, isn't it? And here's a bit more. Oh, there's a nice picture. I mean, it's in lovely setting. It's better than it falling down and all of that. Yeah, very nice. Cool beanage. Okay, so there we go. So what do you think of the book so far? Interesting? Worth pursuing? Shall we go on? I mean, it's a bit wordy in places and a bit sort of whatever. But it's interesting. What I find there's a social comment. All right, so he's, they're rich enough to be able to afford to do what they do. So that's one thing. And what else can we say about them? They've got a driver. He refers to we. I assume it's him and his wife. He hasn't spoken about who the we is, which is interesting. Canopied their bones till doomsday is from Sir Walter Scott. Oh, thank you very much for that. Could one pretend you were looking for a wedding venue? Yes, one could. One could easily pretend that and take some pictures. Can only see on aerial on Google Maps, says Linda Kane. If only walls could talk. Indeed, Alan Leggett. That would be true. Here, get off my land. Carry on reading, says Lee Lawson. Keep going. Yes, I mean, I think it's interesting, isn't it? What I like is this aspect, is the fact that we can read a bit about it and then he'll go somewhere and we can look it up and see what's changed. So in 120 years or more, but about 120 years ago, it was on a farmer's land in a ruined state. His augmentation seems similar to those who opposed to Gustav's Eiffel Tower. Yes. A bit wordy, but that's Victorian writing for you. But what's good is it hasn't been filled so far with too many words which are, difficult to read. So I quite enjoy the sort of chatty thing. Give the book till Friday at least. Oh, definitely. Oh, absolutely. I think it'd be good. I'm quite enjoying it. And we will progress with him on his dog cart. I also, we've had one bloke who's we've had various things. JB Priestley went by car, didn't he? And occasionally took a train and a tram. Old Morton, what's his initials? MV Morton. He had a sort of flashy sports car by all accounts and was belting along. He's going by dog cart. So we've had a walk. We're getting different people who tour in different ways and different perspectives and how they stay and where they stay and all of that. So hopefully not too many yokels to translate. Well, I get the impression that he has written the local dialect in simple English. So he's not got apostrophes and all of that, which I had to contend with. It's in my area at the moment, says John F. Brilliant. John, we will be sending you out. If we can't find somewhere, we will be sending you out as our ambassador to take photographs and send them in of the various places. It would be great. Kay Dean, haven't been able to watch lately. Just wanted to say hi and cannot wait to watch later. Thank you for doing these. You are a bright light. Thank you so much. That's so nice. Do you know, I never thought people would be that bothered by somebody reading live. But it's I really enjoy doing this, and I'm slowly getting better. You know, the more I do it, the better it gets. Although I will be absent on Friday, hospital appointment. Oh, sorry, Turbo. I hope it all goes well. Michael says, I love books with areas you all have knowledge about. Yeah, that's the great thing, is the more people can add things, and you're following from the clues. I think it makes it's like a little reading club. Right, 5 o'clock, time to go. Thank you so much for joining me for this hour. We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll find out where they go next, heading towards East Grinstead. So that would be good. I need to, try and... I'd love to be following in the footsteps as we read. It's not practical to do that because every day we do a different thing. And, there's so many footsteps of... Thanks to Nigel Sadler, who's worked very hard on the Sussex Peep Show maps and points where Walter Wilkinson went with his barrow. You see, there's another traveller who was sleeping in a tent. All these different things, they're just fascinating people, and principally, most of them in the southern half of England, which is where I guess a lot of us are based. So it is very interesting. Anyway, new book, new jumper. Yes. It almost matches. Look at that. Cover matches. Here, there's method in my madness. Until next time, thank you for watching. Take care. Look after yourselves. And bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.